The sky held no kindness that morning. It was a slate-colored sheet pressed low over the hills, as if it wanted to bury the land beneath it. Wind moved through the scrub like a warning. Dry grass clicked against itself. The dirt road had gone stiff with cold frozen into deep wagon ruts. Nothing moved except a single rider coming in from the east, coat torn hat pulled low, one glove missing. His horse limped. A bone-white foam lined its mouth, and its flanks trembled beneath the saddle. He hadn't slept in 2 nights. Not truly. The fire he'd lit near the creek had burned out before dawn, and he hadn't bothered to stoke it. Just sat with his arms around his knees and stared at the dark, listening for nothing. What he carried in his pocket was no heavier than paper, but it had hollowed out his chest. The town rose out of the flat like a punishment. No trees, no sound but the wind and the creak of the old church bell shifting in its tower. Dobbin's Hollow had been dying since the silver left the hills. A few families stayed out of pride or desperation, sometimes both. Men with nowhere else to go. Women with too many children and no place to run. He tied his horse to the post outside the mercantile. The animal shuddered, too tired to whinny, and dropped its head. He left it like that. Inside, the air was thick with dust and the scent of smoked meat. The stove in the corner hissed faintly. 3 men leaned near the counter, whispering about fence lines and feed costs. None of them looked up. He approached the register. The woman behind it was broad-shouldered and frowning, her red hands chapped raw. "I came about the widow," he said. She gave him a long, unreadable look. "You're late." "Wasn't sure I'd come at all." She shrugged. "No refunds." "I'm not asking for one." She reached below the counter and laid out a piece of paper. The ink was faded, the writing sharp and precise. At the bottom, beside the price, $2, was a name struck through. Below it, another. Then another. He took the stub of a pencil from the dish and scrawled his name beneath the rest. The woman didn't bother to read it. "She's out back," she said. "Came 3 weeks ago. No kin. Claims she's 26. Looks older." "Where from?" "Says Montana. I don't ask more than I need to." He nodded once and walked past the bolts of fabric and jars of molasses toward the back door. His boots echoed against the warped boards. He paused just before the handle. Through the narrow window he saw her. She sat on a bench with her hands folded in her lap. No coat. Just a brown dress too thin for the wind. Her dark hair was pinned back, carelessly, strands falling loose around her face. She stared straight ahead, not seeing anything. She didn't turn as he stepped outside. "You the one who paid?" she asked, voice even. "I am." A long silence stretched between them. He thought she might cry or ask what kind of man would pay $2 for a wife no one else wanted. Instead, she stood. "I won't slow you down," she said. He almost laughed. There was no strength in her arms, and her boots looked half a size too big. "I ain't here to make promises," he said. "We ride west in the morning. Cabin's 2 days from here. It's not much. I don't need much." She followed him without asking questions, without looking back at the crooked town or the frozen road. She said nothing when he gave her his coat, only pulled it tighter around her shoulders and kept walking. He watched the way her fingers curled around the cuffs, the way she kept her chin lifted though the wind knifed through them. They slept in the barn. She took the hayloft without complaint. He didn't ask if she'd eaten. He hadn't either. That night the cold pushed deep into the wood, cracking old beams and whispering through the rafters. Somewhere beyond, the horse coughed once, then went still. He lay on his back, eyes on the black ceiling, and listened for her breath above him, steady, even. Like she wasn't afraid at all. The road west was a ribbon of frozen ruts and brittle grass. The sky stayed low, sullen with snow that never quite fell. They rode in silence, 2 figures swallowed by a land that didn't care what they'd come from or where they were going. He glanced back every so often, not to speak, just to make sure she was still there. She was. Always a few paces behind, her shoulders, stiff eyes forward. By the second day her hands had blistered from the reins. He offered her his gloves. She hesitated. "You'll need 'em more than me," she said. "Already lost one," he replied, tossing the pair to her. "Might as well lose both." She didn't thank him, but she wore them. They reached the cabin near dusk. It was a crooked thing set against a wind-bent pine, more shelter than home. One window half-boarded, a door that hung right if you didn't pull it hard. He dismounted, legs aching, and waited while she stared at it. She said, "This yours?" "Built it with my brother. He died 2 winters back." She nodded as if that made sense. Inside, the air was stale with ash and old wood smoke. Dust lined every surface. A cot in the corner, a stove, a battered table, a rope of dried onions hung by the door, and a cracked mirror tilted above the wash basin. She walked in slowly, running her hand along the table's edge. Then she dropped her bundle near the stove and knelt to light the fire. Her fingers moved, steady practice. The flames caught fast, licking at the dry bark. He watched her in the flickering light. Her face was tired but not soft, not broken either. There was something in it like glass, clear, sharp, unfinished. She stood, brushed off her skirt, and said, "Where do you want me to sleep?" He gestured to the cot. "I'll take the floor. Got another blanket in the chest. I ain't looking for charity. I ain't offering it. Just cold wood and peace." She nodded once, then turned her back to him and began unpacking her things: 2 dresses, a comb, a Bible missing its cover. No photographs. No trinkets. She didn't ask what he owned. He didn't offer. The wind rattled the boards all night, but neither of them spoke. The days began slow. She rose before him, stoked the fire-boiled water. When he came in from checking the trap lines, she'd have coffee waiting, thin and bitter but hot. They ate quietly, bread if there was any, jerky if not. She started cleaning without being asked, dug the rot out of the window frame, beat the dust from the rugs. One morning he came in and found the old mirror gone, replaced with a strip of linen she'd washed and stretched taut like a curtain. She didn't say why. They talked in pieces. About the land mostly, how the fence posts wouldn't hold through spring, how the root cellar needed bracing. She asked about the creek. He told her the trout ran better south. She nodded like she meant to try it someday. One afternoon he came in to find her standing barefoot in the snow, her skirts lifted just above her knees, chopping wood. Her face was pale with cold, but her eyes were alive in a way he hadn't seen before. "You'll lose a toe," he said. She kept swinging. "Let it go then." He wanted to smile but didn't. Just took the axe from her hands and finished the pile himself. She watched him, arms folded. "You got a family somewhere?" she asked. "Had. That what the brother was part of." Yeah. "Me too," she said. "Had. And that was all." The next day she patched his coat. The day after that he built her a proper stool for the hearth. When he gave it to her, she ran her hand along the edge, quiet for a long time. "I didn't expect anything solid," she said. "You'll get a lot of solid here," he told her. "Not much else." She didn't smile, but her shoulders eased. That night, as he lay near the stove with his blanket pulled high, he heard her humming. Just a thread of sound, soft as wind through pines. He didn't recognize the tune, but it settled in his chest like warmth. He closed his eyes and let it carry him under. When the rope falls, another story rises. Subscribe to hear it told. By late February, the thaw began, not in the ground but in the air. The sun came slower, but it stayed longer. Ice crawled back from the edges of the creek, and birds returned with wary songs. The cabin smelled of wood smoke and flour now, and the silence between them had turned into something companionable. She worked without complaint. Hauled water, mended shirts, hung venison to dry. Her hands were red and calloused, her arms lined with faint bruises from splitting logs and lifting sacks of feed. But she moved with more surety. She no longer flinched when the wind slammed the door. And sometimes when she thought he wasn't looking, she stood outside with her face to the sun, eyes closed. He watched her from the porch one afternoon as she pulled laundry from the line. A breeze caught the hem of her skirt and wrapped it around her legs. She held it down absently, jaw tight, eyes scanning the sky. "You still look like you're waiting for something bad to happen," he said. She didn't turn. "I am." He stepped down slow. "It don't always." Her lips pressed thin. "It does, eventually. Maybe, but maybe not today." He didn't touch her. Not yet. But he stood close enough for her to feel the truth in his voice. That evening she asked if he'd been born in these parts. He nodded. Father was a drunk. Mother worked the schoolhouse until her lungs gave out. Brother ran wild, but he was loyal. We built this place thinking it'd last longer than us. And it didn't, she said. No, he said. It didn't. They sat on the porch until the sky turned purple behind the pines. She leaned forward, elbows on her knees. "You ever been married?" "No." "You ever want to be?" He looked at her then. Really looked. Her face wasn't beautiful the way some men spoke of, but there was something arresting in it, like a storm coming over a ridge. Earnest, unyielding. "I don't know," he said. "Not till lately." She didn't say anything more, just pulled the blanket tighter around her shoulders and rocked slightly the way children sometimes do when they're thinking too hard. March brought a letter. He found it folded under a stone by the gatepost. No name, just his written in an unfamiliar hand. He read it once, then again, then crumpled it and tossed it in the stove. That night she watched him sharper than usual. Not with suspicion, but concern. What was it, she asked. Nothing worth reading. He didn't elaborate, and she didn't press. But the air between them cooled. He caught her studying him more after that, not like a woman studies a man she wants, like someone gauging the strength of a bridge before she crosses it. 2 days later he found her near the edge of the creek, boots off, toes in the snowmelt. She had a rifle across her lap and a look in her eye like she was trying to remember who she'd been before she came here. "You think it's foolish," she said, without turning to believe anything can start over. He squatted beside her. "No, I think it's the only foolish thing worth doing." She looked at him then, and her face shifted, not softening, but cracking just enough to let something vulnerable show. "I was married before," she said. "Once. He died in a fire. Wasn't a good man. But he was the only one who said I belonged anywhere." He didn't answer right away. Just picked up a flat stone and skipped it across the water. It danced twice before sinking. "You don't need a man to say you belong. You already do." Her eyes filled, but she didn't cry. Instead, she took his hand and held it between both of hers. Rough skin met rough skin. There was nothing tender about it, and yet it was the gentlest thing he'd felt in years. They walked back together, steps slow, night coming in behind them like a closing door. The next few weeks settled like dust on old wood, quiet, constant, not needing much. Snow gave way to mud, then to hard-packed earth. Shoots of green broke through the frost-bitten ground near the tree line. Birds sang louder. The world cracked open a little. She started tending a small patch of dirt near the cabin's south wall, turning soil with her bare hand. Didn't say what she planned to plant. Just worked with a kind of stubborn hope, like she'd already decided something was going to grow there, and that would be that. He fixed the roof while she dug, patching the spots that leaked worst in winter. Every now and then he'd pause, lean his elbow on the ridge, and watch her. Her hair had come loose again. It always did. She didn't seem to care anymore. One morning she made him sit at the table while she cut his hair with her sewing scissors. He protested at first, then let her. She worked in silence, her fingers surprisingly gentle on his scalp. When she finished, she stood back and studied him. "Better," she said. "You look like a man trying not to be seen. And now you look like one who's got nothing left to hide." But not everything softened. She still flinched at sudden sounds, still avoided mirrors. Some nights he'd wake and hear her breathing fast, not crying exactly, just caught in some old fear she wouldn't name. He didn't wake her, just lay still until her breath slowed again. She didn't talk much about the past. What little he knew came in scraps: burned house, a bruise that never healed right, a younger sister buried in a spring thaw. She said it plain, without decoration, like facts, not memories. One afternoon as they walked fence lines, they found a coyote caught in a snare. Its leg was mangled, blood soaking the snow beneath it. She crouched beside it, calm, one hand on the rifle. "I'll do it," he offered. She shook her head. "I've done worse." The shot rang out. Quick, clean. She stood, wiped her hands on her dress, and they kept walking. That night he asked her if she believed in God. She was stirring the pot of beans and didn't look up. "Sometimes, when I see things grow that shouldn't. Like after a fire." He nodded. "And when don't you? When men like my first husband live as long as they do." Neither spoke for a while. The beans bubbled softly. Then she added, "You." He shrugged. "Don't know if I believe, but I talk to him sometimes, even if I don't expect a reply." She nodded. "That counts." They came into town together in early April for salt nails and new hinges. She wore a clean dress, hair braided, eyes sharp. He noticed how the shopkeeper looked her over, curious, like she was something unusual. But no one said a word. As they left, a man in a wool coat stepped from the porch of the saloon and tipped his hat. A stranger, tall, lean, his boots too fine for Dobbin's Hollow. "Ma'am," he said, then glanced at the man beside her. "And you must be the one who paid for her." The air shifted. The old pain she carried climbed right back into her shoulders. He stepped forward. "You know him?" "No," she said, too quick. But her hand trembled. The stranger smiled slow. "You might not remember me, but I knew your husband, knew what he owed." She said nothing, just stood still, breathing hard. He didn't ask questions, just stepped between them and said, "You've got no business here." "Maybe," the man replied, "but I think she owes me a debt. Something he promised me before he went and got himself burned." The rifle was in the wagon. Too far. But his fists were not. He took one step forward. "You don't come near her again." The stranger's smile faded. "You don't know what kind of woman she is." "I know enough." The man didn't push it, just tipped his hat again and walked off slow, like he had all the time in the world. She didn't speak until they were halfway home. Then, so quiet he almost missed it, she said, "He used to bring men home. Make them deals. I didn't know what for." "You don't owe any of them." "I know that now." He glanced over at her. "You scared?" She shook her head. "Not anymore." But that night she placed the rifle by the door, just in case. The wind picked up again in April, a dry, restless kind that blew through the cracks and made the walls groan. He fixed what he could. Packed clay into the gaps, hammered loose boards, tight sealed the door with a strip of hide. Still, the cold found its way in. She didn't seem to mind. She sat by the fire most evenings now, her knees tucked up, sewing patches into the worn quilt that covered the cot. It wasn't for warmth, more a kind of claiming, he thought. Quiet ownership of a life she hadn't expected but was slowly choosing. He caught her humming again one night. Same melody, Still nameless, still sad. You always sing the same song? He said. She didn't look up. It's the only one I remember from before. Before what? Before I stopped being someone. He sat down beside her close enough that their knees touched. The fire threw shadows on the walls, long flickering things that moved like ghosts. You're someone now, he said. She nodded, eyes still on the stitch. I'm trying. The stranger returned a week later. This time they heard him before they saw him. A horse on the ridge, slow and deliberate. He rode alone. When he dismounted, he didn't go to the door. He stood near the gate, arms crossed, waiting. She stepped out first, rifle in hand. No fear in her face this time, only something hard and final. He joined her but didn't speak. The man raised one hand. I didn't come for a fight. Then you're already ahead of your last visit, she said. He glanced at her, surprised. You've grown teeth. I had them before, just wasn't allowed to use them. He looked to the man beside her. You told her the truth yet? About what? About that paper. The one you burned. She turned. What's he talking about? He exhaled. Slow. Regret heavy in his throat. It was a claim, he said. Said you were property. That someone still held a legal right over you. That's not possible. It shouldn't be. But he had the papers to say otherwise. Her face went still. Not fear this time, something deeper. Betrayal, maybe. Why didn't you tell me? Because it wasn't true. Not where it counts. She looked at the stranger. And what do you want now? He shifted, suddenly less certain. Honestly, just to see if you were still afraid. She lifted the rifle, leveled it. Not anymore. He stared at her for a moment, then nodded, turned and mounted his horse. I won't be back, he said. Good. They watched him ride away. He didn't look back. Later inside, she sat on the cot, her hands tight in her lap. You should've told me, she said. I know. I don't need protecting. I know that too. Silence held for a while. Then she reached for his hand, pressed it against her heart. You made me a promise you didn't say out loud, she whispered. Just don't break it. He didn't. That night, for the first time, she didn't sleep in the cot alone. They didn't speak much. Just lay close bodies, warm breath steady. No hunger in it, just rest. A long one. The kind that follows years of running. In the dark, he said, You're not what I expected. She whispered back, I don't think I am either. Spring came in slow, like a cautious guest. The trees along the ridge budded out in pale green, and the creek ran louder, breaking free of its winter grip. Birds nested in the eaves, and she started leaving the door open during the day, letting in the scent of thawed earth and wet pine. She planted her garden in earnest now. Rows of potatoes, onions, a hopeful line of beans along the southern wall. He built her a fence to keep the deer out. When she wasn't looking, he carved her name into one of the posts, just her first name, neat and plain. It felt like something sacred. She found it days later. Ran her fingers over the letters. Didn't say anything, but that evening she made cornbread from the last of the meal and brought it to him warm with honey. When he took the first bite, she was already walking away, but he saw her smile, small and sideways, like she wasn't sure she was allowed to enjoy anything yet. They worked together without speaking much, fenced more pasture, fixed the barn roof. She helped him birth a calf one muddy morning in May. It came out breech slick and blue-tongued, and he thought it might not breathe. But she kept rubbing, whispering something he couldn't make out. The calf gasped. Live. That night she cried into his chest. Didn't explain why. Didn't need to. Then came the letter. He found her at the creek, kneeling, sleeves rolled. The envelope was in her lap, already opened. No return address. She looked up when she heard him. "It's from a cousin in Helena," she said. "They're offering me work. Sewing. Boarding house. Says I could bring a child if I had one." He crouched beside her, heart sinking. "You thinking of going?" "I don't know." He nodded. Waited. She ran a wet sleeve across her face. "I never had choices before. Not real ones. It's strange. I don't even know how to want something." "What do you want now?" She turned to him. "I want peace. I want not to feel like I'm always one step from vanishing. I want to stop waiting for someone to take it all back." He reached for her hand, cold from the water. "You think I'd let them?" She stared at their fingers twined together. "That's the thing. You wouldn't." "Then stay." "I might." He looked at her, and for the first time there was something certain in her gaze. No flinch. No shadow. "But I need to choose it," she said. "Not just stay because you paid $2 and no one else did." He nodded once, slow. "I know." The next morning she was gone. Left a note on the table. Neat script. Just a few lines. "I have to go find out if I'm whole on my own. If I am, I'll come back. If I'm not, I won't burden you. Thank you for seeing me." He read it twice. Sat there for a long while. Then he folded it carefully and placed it inside the Bible she'd left behind. That week, the cabin felt hollow. The food tasted like ash. The cot stayed cold. But he didn't try to follow her. Didn't send a letter. He just kept doing what he did, splitting wood, checking traps, tending the garden she started. He watered her beans like they were fragile things, like they might remember her. Summer came, and with it heat that pressed against the windows and turned the creek low and slow. The garden held. He let the onions bolt, watched the bees come and go. Then one evening in August, just before the sky split open with rain, he heard the wagon. He stepped onto the porch, breath caught in his throat. She was there, reins in hand, dressed dusty. Her hair longer, her face different but not strange. She didn't speak at first, just climbed down slow, like the air here had weight she hadn't carried in a while. "I got halfway to Helena," she said. "Worked 3 weeks in Bozeman instead. Realized I didn't need saving, just rest. And now I'm rested." He looked at her, trying not to hope too hard. "Is this choosing?" he asked. She stepped closer, took his face in her hands. "This is choosing." Then she kissed him, not quick, not desperate. Just sure. Like something settled. The rain broke open above them, and they stood in it, soaked to the bone, grinning like children. No one came to watch. No one needed to. Inside, everything waited as they'd left it. They married in the clearing behind the cabin. No preacher, no papers. Just the wind and the pines, the river murmuring nearby, and the sky wide and honest above them. He carved 2 rings from juniper, smoothed them with the edge of his knife, tied them with a thread until her fingers healed from the garden blisters. When he slid hers on, she laughed once, soft and breathless, like it surprised her. Later she'd press that ring into the dirt of every seed she planted, like it meant something, like the promise in it might help things grow. The seasons moved on. Autumn arrived with sharp winds and long shadows. They canned tomatoes and smoked meat, stacked wood high on the porch. He taught her how to shoot straighter, and she showed him how to mend a shirt so the stitching wouldn't pull. They argued sometimes about small things like where to put the kettle or how long to boil the potatoes, but never with cruelty. They knew what cruelty was. They'd lived under its roof. Now they lived under something else. Some days he found her on the porch with a book, open, feet tucked beneath her lips, moving silently as she read aloud. He never asked what she read, just listened from inside while the fire crackled and the sun dipped low behind the hills. She'd glance up now and then, and if he was watching, she'd smile. Once in late October, she brought him to the edge of the garden and pointed at the bare patch where nothing had grown all summer. "I think next spring I'll try sunflowers," she said. He nodded. "They'd like it here." She turned to him. "I do." One morning in early winter, she woke him before dawn, her fingers pressed to his wrist. "I'm late," she said. He blinked into the dark. "Late for what?" "For the third time." He sat up slowly. "You sure?" "I think so." They didn't celebrate, not exactly. Just sat there in the quiet, her head on his shoulder, his hand over hers. After a long while she whispered, "I never thought I'd get to be a mother. Not the way I wanted." "You will." "You think I'll be good at it?" "I think you already are." She exhaled. "I'm scared." He kissed her forehead. "Me too." They stayed like that for hours until the light finally cracked the edge of the window. Then she stood, stretched, and started the fire like always. But when he came in from the morning frost, there were biscuits in the oven and a small cloth doll sitting on the windowsill, stitched from scrap and old thread. It had no face, just a blank, gentle shape. "I figured we could give it a name later," she said. That winter passed quieter than most. Snow piled up high along the fences and the roof groaned under its weight. He reinforced the rafters. She padded the walls with extra quilts. They prepared the cabin like people who planned to stay. In February he found her near the fire, a hand resting on her stomach, eyes closed. "What do you think it'll be?" he asked. She smiled. "Someone new." In April, the first sunflowers began to push through the dirt. He saw her out there one morning, hands deep in the soil, the wind tugging at her braid. She looked up when he stepped outside, raised a hand. Not to wave, just to show him she was there. He waved back. Later that night, as they sat on the porch with a blanket wrapped around them, she said, "You know, I used to think all love ever did was take. And now—" She leaned against him, her head just beneath his chin. "Now I know it can build." He didn't answer, just pulled her closer and watched the stars blink on one by one. Inside, the doll still waited on the windowsill. Outside, the soil had begun to bloom. If the frontier stirred you, subscribe and keep writing.